Welcome to By the Cottage Hearth with Dana Maree. I'll be taking you through the journey we make as healers, the impact we're yet to make, and the words to use to describe it. Come on in. Hello healers, and welcome back to the Hearth. This is episode 14, and today I'm going to be answering the question, what does real self-care look like? So I was hesitant to go with this as a podcast topic or subject, because I feel like self-care is almost a buzzword, like a buzz topic in terms of things that get talked about online and in the coaching space. And already I'm feeling that, do I really want to talk about self-care? But the reality is that as healers, what we tell ourselves self-care is might not necessarily be the self-care that we need to put in place. So the image, the idea of what self-care might look like, and these might be some of the things that come to mind for you as well. It might be that self-care looks like bubble baths and soaks in the tub and massages and luxury. I think that is one of the ways that I looked at self-care for the longest time. And when you are someone who puts a lot of people before yourself, a lot of needs before your own, it can be really hard to prioritize something that you look at as luxury, self-care as taking time out to read a book and all of these kind of things. And those aren't necessarily not self-care. I know that taking time out to read is a self-care practice for myself. But again, when you associate that with being a luxury, it's really hard to prioritize time for that. And I think coming back to that nurturing personality type that a lot of us have as healers, we show our love often by doing things for other people. So maybe someone is not feeling well, so we will make them food. I know that's something that comes through. One of my love languages is cooking for people. I do a lot of kitchen or hearth oriented magic, so I put a lot of love into my cooking, and that's how I help take care of other people. You might be listening to other people, you might be helping them through something, they might be struggling with something, so you help them figure it out. And that might be a way that we ourselves help other people. But again, coming back to the idea that we are so energy oriented in our work as healers, whether we use an energy modality or not, there is an energy exchange between our clients and us, that when you aren't putting proper self-care practices in place, when you don't have an intentional way of refilling your cup and you're constantly trying to pour out of an empty one, you experience burnout so regularly and so often that it just becomes a part of the cycle. You know, you burn out, you recoup from the burnout, you go and do the same thing over and over again, and then you end up back into burnout because you're constantly looking after everyone else and you're not looking after yourself. So when I started recognizing this behavior in myself, and also recognizing that it wasn't sustainable, if I was someone who wanted to work as a healer, I wanted to facilitate healing in my business, I knew that I needed to be more intentional about the way that I was using my energy. And that wasn't necessarily just things like automation in my business or having better boundaries, which could both be examples of self-care practices. I needed to be more mindful about having things in place that helped me recognize when I was getting to that edge of burnout, so I didn't go over it. So if you haven't experienced burnout before, I can imagine a lot of people listening to this have, there is a point where you have exhausted yourself so much, you almost get into desperation. You're acting from a desperate energy where you're like in survival mode. You are clawing your way every day just to get through the day. And it is a very heart-wrenching realization to get to the point where you have to admit you have nothing left to give, especially when you're someone who your giving energy is a crucial part of who you are, and as healers, what we naturally feel called to. So when you hit this point of burnout, you end up needing to admit to yourself you've got nothing left to give. You need to take a chance to rest, to recuperate, to replenish your energy stores. But I find a lot of us will do that, and it's almost that feast and famine roller coaster that you experience in business. We will get to the point where we're feeling better and we tell ourselves, okay, I'm good now, I've replenished myself enough, and then we will go back and do the exact same things that we did and burn ourselves out. Or maybe we didn't actually rest enough and we aren't even out of burnout, but we're tricking ourselves into it because we want to be able to go back to helping people. So if bubble baths and reading books aren't what real self-care looks like, what can we put in place? What are some things that we could do that could really help our energy stores? So one of the first things that I want to advocate for is being honest with yourself. Real self-care looks like being honest with yourself about what you need and how you're feeling. And there might be people who disagree with me on that, and that is totally fine. Again, this is my self-expression. But I think self-awareness and honesty with yourself about how you are feeling goes a mighty long way in terms of protecting your well-being and your energy as a healer. So I know that I have a personal tendency to stay in denial about a lot of things. And I think that is probably one of the biggest things that did push me into burnout, because I wasn't being honest with myself about how absolutely fucking exhausted I am. I was at the time. And when I'm doing that, when I'm telling myself, no, it's fine, I can just push through this, and I'm not being honest about where I'm at or what I actually need, or even when I need help. That might be one of the things I'm not being honest with myself. When I'm doing that, I am just hurting myself for the sake of pushing through. If you are honest with yourself about where you are, maybe it'll give you the opportunity to check in and be like, actually, I need help. Actually, I need to get a part-time job to bring some income in, because this is just not working right now and I need to take a break. I need to take a break. Maybe that's something you need to be honest with yourself. When I was shame coaching and I had written Now Get Back Up, this is something I talk about honestly, openly, and regularly because of the impact that it had in my life and the catalyst that it was. When I wrote my book, Now Get Back Up, I wrote about a lot of really heavy subjects. A lot of people actually couldn't read the whole book in one sitting because of how emotional it was to read through and realize all of those things had happened to me. It was a very heavy book. But for me, I pushed through writing that book. I wrote and published that book in 12 weeks. And when I look at the subject matter that I explored, wrote about, and then shared with the world within that time period, within 3 months, I was not honest with myself about how I was feeling going through that. And if I had have been, maybe I would have gotten myself more support. Maybe I would have given myself a longer period of time to write that book over. And maybe I would have reviewed the content of that book before I'd published it and gone, is this story ready for me to share? Now, I don't regret that I wrote the book. It was a huge catalyst for my personal growth. I am about to celebrate 3 years sober, so my relationship with alcohol and reviewing what had happened in my life, because I hadn't stopped drinking. That was something positive that came from the book. Some realizations about relationships and dynamics that I had in my life. I had some realizations around that, and I did some healing work around that, which gave me the capacity to reclaim some power within my own life. Some decisions that I wanted to make from my business. I had essentially made myself this poster child of pain. I was reliving these stories over and over again in my content, and I was so locked onto the stories, I wasn't seeing the underlying lesson that I wanted people to learn. And as much as I thought that was about shame, I realized that shame was actually a tool that I was using, and my work went a lot deeper. So it did lead me to self-expression in my business, and I'm grateful for that. But if I had have given myself some honesty and had the self-awareness to realize what was going on over that time period, I could have navigated that a lot differently. Maybe I wouldn't have burnt my business down to the ground, deleted mailing lists and social media, and set myself back a little bit. But at the same time, from that period when I was finally being honest with myself about what I needed, coming into this version of my business, it has been completely different. So the way that I work with clients, what I am and I'm not willing to do in my business, I have a lot of clarity around that. But that came from being honest with myself regularly as a form of self-care and protecting my energy. So some of the other things that you might put in place, especially if you're a healer that works with an energy modality, is having regular energy practices in place. Now, this might be things like regular cleansings. This might be putting shielding practices in place. And if this terminology is not familiar to you, you are more than welcome to reach out and ask me about it. I'm happy to talk about these kind of things. I'm someone who was raised practicing the craft. So I was raised in a pagan family. Shielding and energy practices is something that I was taught from a very young age. It was something that, as much as I had a dysfunctional upbringing, there's a lot of awareness about the intentions that go into energy practices and things like that. And I'm grateful that being aware of the way that my energy connects to others and how other people's energy can actually impact and influence me is something that I was aware of. But being aware of something does not necessarily mean that you're actually regularly implementing it. So I have slipped off the bandwagon many times in my life. And I knew better. So I think having regular practices in place, it's kind of coming back to that having boundaries or being, I have rules for myself, quote unquote. I have rules for myself as to ways that I work with energy, what I am and am not willing to do, where my lines are in terms of how I use energy. So as an example of this, I work with energy through my Seither, through my Wolfa magic, through my work. That's using my staff, that's using my runic card readings. There are a lot of pieces of through song. There's a lot of ways that I work with energy in my spiritual practice and in my work behind the scenes of self-expression work that I do through like Saga, through my one-on-one VIP sessions. Even my clairsentience, which is my strongest clear, I feel a lot in my sessions. I have a lot of practices in place in terms of how I close sessions, like after we finish a session, things that I have in place to ground myself, to release what I have felt from someone else, so I'm not carrying maybe feelings of someone else throughout the day. So if I've had a particularly emotional session with someone, if I don't put these practices into place, they can end up being quite heavy for the rest of the day. So I might be quite irritable. I might be quite snappy, and it's because I've taken on those feelings from someone else, and I haven't created that separation between what I'm feeling and what someone else is feeling. And I feel like this is something that a lot of healers actually struggle with, because when you are doing even remote healing, or you're doing maybe Reiki, or, those kind of modalities, you do need to create that separation between what am I feeling and what is my client feeling, because otherwise we can absorb that, and there is the risk of being re-triggered if you're working with clients who have gone through something that you've also gone through, and it can bring up those stories of your past. So real self-care is, again, coming back to that honesty, being honest about how you're feeling, and if the work that you're doing is actually re-triggering you, if there are things that you need to put in place to protect your energy, to have routines or rituals that you put in place for yourself post-session, pre-session. Maybe it's connecting to your spirit team, your spirit guides, whoever, whatever terminology or language you use. Maybe there is a way that you touch base that can kind of put that protection in place. And if it feels like this is something maybe you've slipped a little bit on because you've kind of gotten into that habit of doing all of the logical, practical, that side of the brain stuff in your business and sending out newsletters, and you're slipping into just focusing on that stuff, I encourage you to step back into the healer aspect of your business, the energy side of your business, and ask yourself, am I maintaining this side of my business as well, or am I slipping into the marketing business brain side of stuff and forgetting why I'm here and what I'm doing in the first place? Because it's very easy to do. It's something I have to regularly bring myself back out of. Sometimes it'll just involve taking my stuff and just connecting to the team that I work with and the spirits that I work with, maybe even doing devotional housework, which I'm dedicated to Frigg, so this is something I talk about a bit. Devotional housework for me, the reason why it's an act of devotion is because I absolutely hate housework. It is not a good time, and I'm sure there probably isn't really anyone that enjoys it per se, but it is a sacrifice for me to intentionally light a candle and go and clean a certain part of the house, as an act of devotion to Frigg, because it becomes a form of like meditation almost for me. It grounds me into what I'm thinking about. And sometimes if I feel like I'm getting very caught up in the marketing, online business, content creation side of my business, I do something like that to just anchor me back into the work that I'm doing and the intention that I have for the energy that I'm putting out in the world, and reminding myself why I'm doing the work that I'm doing in the first place, because that helps anchor me back into my why and helps with those business spirals where I'm worrying about, am I doing the right thing, and this is how I'm meant to send out emails and all that kind of stuff. I connect back to my why and I let that lead me, rather than what this business mentor says I should be doing and all that kind of stuff. So that's another form of real self-care. Other things that I think sometimes come up in the conversations about self-care, and it's one that I struggle with. I, on the surface, know I should be doing it, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm fantastic at implementing it. Eating well and drinking water. Now, I know these are things I should be doing, but I do not prioritize them. It is something that I'm focusing on at the moment, is bringing better nutrition into my life. And now I have studied nutrition and naturopathy, so I do know better. It's not a lack of education. It is me not prioritizing it, which I should be doing. But this is something I think gets talked about when it comes to self-care, and on a surface level we know, but we don't necessarily prioritize it. And I think it comes back to that idea that we are prioritizing everyone else in our lives. So I make sure that my kids are eating well. I will go out of my way to cook something for my partner. But then when it comes down to making sure that I've eaten well and I've been drinking water, I have a tendency to brush that off and be like, oh, when I'm finished working on this, or when I've done this particular part, then I'll go and do it. So I have to be very intentional about making sure that I am taking the time to meal plan, and I look at the deficiencies I have in my diet and the symptoms that I might be showing, because these are one of the things that will actually lead to burnout and fatigue and exhaustion. And as energy healers, well, I don't want to say as energy healers, as healers who should be mindful of their energy, that's how I wanted to articulate it. Our nutrition and our capacity to do our work relies heavily on us looking after our physical bodies, as much as making sure that we have energy protections in place. So if we are not eating well, and we are not drinking water, and we are relying on sugars or quick fixes to sustain us through the day, if we get sick, we can't heal. We can't do our work, and that might look like loss of income. That might look like having to reschedule clients. I've just had the flu come through our house, and I wasn't able to record podcast episodes. I wasn't able to jump on and do lives or videos for my business. And my partner, who is a YouTuber, and he does the editing for my content and for my business as well. My fiance, I'm going to say that as much as possible before we get married. He wasn't able to edit anything because he was in bed hiding under the covers. So he couldn't edit content for me. He couldn't record his own content. And it impacted our businesses, both of us, for a few weeks. And while we are going to get sick, it's not like we can completely avoid that. We both had the realization, especially when we ended up in hospital, and he ended up with pneumonia, which for me was quite scary with my history of, being widowed and my stories that I tell myself that it might happen again. It was quite emotional and scary for me personally. It reminded us that it is something that we do need to prioritize, and it's not something that we can, I know, I'll do it one day. No, it is something that we need to make sure that we're doing, and we're looking after our physical bodies and not just our energy, because I think they say that doctors make the worst patients. I think healers in general make the worst patients, because we very much do as we say and not as we do. I know I can be quite hypocritical myself, because I am very big-hearted and I worry about my clients. And in my work in VIP and the healers that I'm working with, I'm frequently having that mirror reflect back to me the things that I should be working on in myself. And I do want to be a good example of what we should be doing, that we should be putting things into practice. And as much as I practice my self-expression work, I should also be putting real self-care in place, which means looking after my physical body, looking after my energetic body, mind, body, and soul and spirit. And I should be giving each one of those as much attention as the next, to be able to make sure that I'm not only doing it for my own sake or for my family's sake, I'm also doing it for my client's sake. So this is your check-in reminder that real self-care is not a luxury. It is not bubble baths and doing arts and crafts because it makes you feel good. It is remembering that you are a being that has many different aspects. There are different parts of you that need to be looked after holistically. And as much as we are always willing to put that energy into helping others, we really should look in that mirror and reflect back that love to ourselves and looking after ourselves, not just for our client's sake. I know it's something that is always going to be something I struggle with for lots of different reasons, but this is my own check-in to say that I should be working on it more, and I can imagine that there probably are a lot of people in my audience that need to be reminded the same. So thank you for listening in to this episode. I would love to hear if this remind you that you have some things that you need to put into place. As always, you can reach out and email me, admin@bythecottagehearth.com, or you can jump into social media, reach out and just let me know. Is this something that you think maybe you've let slip? Is this something that you could be a bit more intentional about? Maybe you need to make just as much time for your own well-being as you do for making newsletters and social media content or working with your clients. As always, thank you for listening, and I shall see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of By the Cottage Hearth with me, your host, Dana Maree. Make sure to like, subscribe and follow on whatever platform you're on to be notified of new episodes, and you can also follow me on By the Cottage Hearth on Facebook and Instagram. Check out show notes for any links or freebie goodies that I might have going at the time. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next episode. Keep healing.